After having seen how to create inline and internal CSS, we're now going to shift to the most useful and probably the most widely used paradigm for CSS styling, and that is to work with external CSS. So to begin with, we're still with our Tales of Mystery and Imagination file that we've been working with over the last few videos, and that is inside the Chapter 4 Start menu. And what I want to do is to take a look at the very base element that we are working with here, and that will be the body tag. So what I'm attempting to do is to create an external style sheet that's going to be styling exactly what the body looks like. And the body is the parent tag for all visual elements on this particular page. So let's see how to do just that. I'm going to expand my panels so that we can see not only the Files menu, but if I double-click the Files menu to collapse it and double-click the CSS Styles window, we're going to open up our CSS styles. And in here you can see that I've got a very large section, and down at the bottom of this window there is a little plus sign that says New CSS Rule. So let's click on that. When we do, it opens up the new CSS rule window that we have here. Now, there are many different types of selectors that we can choose from, and selectors, as we'll see a little bit more, will be explained in a video dealing specifically with classes and one dealing specifically with IDs. But the one that I'm interested in right now is the tag or element selector. So what we are doing with this, when we click on this, is to determine which of the HTML elements we are choosing to redefine site-wide. So that means all H3s or all H1s or all paragraphs, or in our case, all body tags. So I can just come in here and type in body. Or if I wanted to, I could choose from this extremely long list of just about every single tag in HTML that we could hope to work with. But in our case, it's the body that we are specifically interested in because the body is the first element where all other elements will reside. So before we move on, the rule definition, choosing where the rule will be defined. You might remember in the last example we chose this document only, which created style tags inside of the head section. That was an internal CSS example, and that's not what we're interested in. In this case, we want to create a brand new style sheet file. And what that means is you are creating an external style sheet. So I'm going to click OK. Now, before anything else happens, the first thing that you are going to be prompted with is Save Style Sheet File As. And this is only the first time that you create an external style sheet that you will see this window. Well, basically what it's saying is, all right, I'm going to make you a style sheet, but where do you want to save it? Now you'll notice it's attempting to save this inside of Chapter 4 in the Start root folder that we chose originally, and that was defined in our File menu. So here I'm going to choose the _CSS folder that I've prepared for you ahead of time. And it's in this folder that we are going to be creating our style sheet. Now just give it a name. Save it as, well, quite literally anything you want, but I'm going to call it style.css. You'll notice that the URL here says go to the root folder and find me CSS / and within there will be style.css. This is a relative link to the document. So I'm going to click OK. And when you do that, it's going to open up the CSS rule definition for body inside of style.css. And over here in the CSS styles window, you can see that yes, it's created this new page, style.css, for us. All right, well, what do we want to do? Like I said, the body is the parent tag for all visual elements that are on our page. In other words, every other tag rests inside of the body tag. So I'm going to say something like, okay, font family. What kind of font do we want to see with regards to all of our text? Well, The concept that I'm explaining to you here is one that's known inside of CSS as inheritance. Because I have a parent visual element like the body tag, all other elements that are inside of that body tag are going to inherit this particular font family. So if I were to say, for example, let's choose Georgia times New Roman times serif, or maybe I could even choose some other type of serif as well. So perhaps Palatino linotype book Antiqua Palatino serif. If I were to choose this, and then I am going to determine exactly what the font size will be. Now, font size is something that we really need to talk about in a separate video with regards to the units of measurement. But for this first little example, and since we're dealing with the body, I'm going to ask you to type in 100%. Now you could type it in, or you could also use this drop-down menu that I have right here, which determines pixels. For example, if I were to say 100, I could come in here and say pixels, points, inches, centimeters, or more common, ems. But in this case, I'm going to say percent. Now, why do I say percent, 100% for the font size? Well, the font size is something that is related to the specific user agent, or rather the specific browser. And in some browsers, the default font size for paragraphs might be 16. In other browsers, it might be something else. So we generally will set the body to 100%. And that's relative to the specific user agent. However, this is also a useful step because it eliminates some rendering issues and errors rather inside of certain browsers like Internet Explorer. So I'm just going to say font size 100%. Now, something else that we could do is to determine a color for the body. Now, this color is not the body's background color. The body's background color is still going to be white. If we wanted to change that, we would go into the category for background. But you'll see that in some other examples. In this case, I'm going to specify, as the category we're dealing with is typography and type, I'll say, well, let's just choose something like this dark gray. So 333. So if I were to apply this, notice if you just press apply, you can see the change, and if you like it, then you can click OK. But if you don't, you can make changes. For example, if I come in here and I choose this light gray and I click on apply, you can see how that looks, and I could say, oh, well, that's great, but you know what, I think I need it a little darker, so I'll go with 333, press apply, and say, yes, it's not black, but it's just a little bit lighter. I kind of like that, so I'll click OK and then accept that particular rule. So notice what happened. The font size has changed. Well, actually, the font size has not changed. It's 100% of what it should be originally. But we notice that there is the font family change. I'm just going to open this up a little bit more, and there is the font stack, Palatino, Linotype, etc., etc. So if we have Palatino on this particular computer installed, then that's what we're going to be seeing here. If not, we'll go to Book Antiqua. So these are elements that we have in fact changed, including also the color. And you can see here inside the CSS styles menu that we have right over here, you'll notice a couple of things. Right now I'm saying all, and it's showing me all rules. When you see this and you can expand it, you'll see that on the external style sheet called style.css, there is a body selector that's being used. That's great. No problems there. You'll also notice that there's some property information here. So if I wanted to, I could specify another property by adding property, clicking on this link. Or I could come in here and I could make changes. Maybe I don't like Palatino. Maybe I want something else. For example, I can click on this and choose maybe MS Serif New York. And you can see that that looks a little bit different as well. And perhaps I could change the color value. And as you can see there, that's going to be making changes also. However, that's not exactly what I wanted. I want to keep it the way it is, but we'll make a change and I'll go back to Palatino that I had just a second ago. All right, so that's a little bit about how we can get started with an external CSS file. But before we move on, let me show you one last thing. Here in the code view, you'll notice that there is no information in line. There's nothing inside the body tag, and nothing has changed. It looks just clean and great. There's also nothing in the head section that looked like the internal example that we were using. However, we do happen to have something in the head section. It is this small little link tag. And notice this is one of those rare link tags that actually do not have a closing tag, right? It's just one tag right there. And the href attribute is saying you can find the link to the style sheet, css style.css. And this is having a relationship of style sheet, and the type of file we're looking for is text.css. So this little link line is the only thing that's actually styling this the way it is and makes it look the way it does, which is really fantastic. And finally, if I open up my files window as we saw before, you'll notice that inside the CSS folder there happens to be style.css. Really, really nice. Very great. Now let me also mention one last thing. When you have a number of files that are linked, as this one happens to be, to an external CSS, you'll notice up at the top, inside of the index.html area, there's a little button here that says source code, which is showing me the HTML source code, but there's also now included style.css. The little asterisk says it hasn't been saved yet. So if I click on this, you can now get a look at what the style sheet that we've just created, this one right here, looks like. And Dreamweaver puts in this character set of UTF-8 line in there for you. But as you can see, it's got the selector of body, and it's declaring the font family, the font size, and the font's color. So if you like that, you can say File Save, or you can click Command S or Control S on the PC, and here you'll see the asterisk disappears. If I go back to the source code, everything looks cool. And this is how you go about creating a link to an external CSS file.